Hello, everyone. I'm excited to join you. We're recording this actually before the conference because of a surprise deal meeting that Ben's leading, but I will be here in person to help answer your questions. But speaking of me, my name is actually Jerome Chu. I've had over a decade of experience running go-to-market for startups. I live in Houston, Texas, and currently lead growth at Diffbot, a fact-finding AI company. We're also the company that built LeadGraph, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, but it won't be the big part of this session today. Here with me is Ben Lin, Director of Sales at Diffbot, and an overall badass. I'll let him get us a few seconds to talk about himself as well.
Hey everyone, it's great to meet you all. I am happy to be here today. I lead the commercial sales team here at Diffbot and have worked at a multiple amount of startups building their outbound and inbound sales process. So really excited to share some things I've learned across the years and hopefully some good takeaways for you all.
Thanks, Ben. So today we're going to share 3 prospecting pro tips from our own prospecting that led to more booked meetings. They're a bit unconventional because these tips are not meant for job title prospecting or high volume cold calling. And by that I mean like if you're going to LinkedIn and typing in literally CTO and building a list of 5,000 people, this is not really quite the session for you. So who is this actually for? This is for people who are running a list of target accounts or for people doing their own account targeting. And for those folks, I promise this will help a lot. This will be kind of a hands-on session. So there's kind of very, very limited, actually just 2 slides and plenty of screen sharing so you can see exactly how we do it on LeadGraph. So I'll be doing the screen sharing. Ben will be doing most of the talking here. But before we get down to the actual 3 points, I want to give you a little context as to how we even came to these pro tips, right? So around like 3, 4, 5 years ago, we were all inbound over at Diffbot. Our primary audience, people we generally sold to, would be CTOs, CPOs, people with like data science backgrounds and then things who want to take advantage of our database of companies and people. So unlike a lot of other sort of like Zoom info type companies, they buy massive CSVs of companies and people. We actually crawl our own data, and we provide an API for people to access it. So that's basically all you need to know about us. But essentially, at the time, we're running a lot of inbound, and when we started switching over to outbound, we're finding that a lot of these conventional lead intel or sales intelligence tools were not really what we needed. We needed to find companies, specifically companies that were a good match for us. So not just titles, not just people we could call, but literally companies that have sort of a data science team or companies that have a data background and a team that is willing to sort of integrate with our APIs. So that's really specific targeting. And these pro tips today are really going to dive into the meat of how we do that. So that's all the context I have. Let's jump into the actual topics themselves. So let me share my screen here. Right. So the 3 points, I'll let Ben actually lead us with this, and I'll be screen sharing as he goes so you can see what we're talking about.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerome. So the number 1 pro tip is a good ICP, ideal customer profile, is at least 6 parameters, right? So ICP, ideal customer profile, tends to be built with either a company's current customer list, right? And then they derive data from there, or even for really early age startups, I like to say your ideal customer list, right? An ideal world, what are the top couple dozen companies, right, that you think would fall into your ICP. And so from what I've seen and a lot of, speaking with a lot of sales teams, most ICP is done at a very high level and almost done a little too quickly, right? So most ICPs will consist of about 3 or 4 data points. Location, industries, and employees are the most common that we've seen. But it does really pay off to be much more specific than that. right? A lot of third-party sales softwares, such as your Zoom Infos of the world, right? They tend to focus on these three parameters the most. If you're not using a sales software, we've also seen people do it themselves, right? They'll have a company list and they'll enrich it themselves, find the average or the median employee range, industry, locations, things like that. A lot of the times when you do this, however, it'll show things at a very generic level, right? So, if you're targeting SaaS companies, software companies, it'll just say, hey, your number one industry is software. Doesn't provide further intel than that. Now, using something like LeadGraph, and Jerome will share this with you in just a second, we can tell you what your most unique firmographics are in your customer set and also scale it across to about 8 data points rather than 3 or 4. Right, if you're taking a look at the screen right now, we have things like, the median employees, median revenue and location, but also tertiary level of industries. So you'll see software companies at the very top, but when we dig deeper, we can actually tell you, hey, it's actually AI specific companies, NLP specific companies, and actually SaaS companies as well. And keywords as well. So these are common keywords that appear in the company's homepages, appear in their social media descriptions, like your LinkedIn, your Crunchbases of the world, things like that. Technologies. And so we have a system that vets out the most common technologies, but we want to be really specific and find the unique technologies, right? So HubSpot, Elasticsearch, right? Differentiations from the account building, account segmentation type of approach. And the 2 on the bottom are funding stages as well. We primarily work with startups, late stage startups, early stage startups, as well as how old these companies are. And so when you really invest the time into building out your ICP, it really pays off. And we'll get to our second point on account selection. I'll pass it back to Jerome for any additional thoughts or things to point out.
Yeah. So just for more context, this is something that we built, right? You can absolutely always do this ICP analysis on your own. With LeadGraph, you just pull in the list and it'll just auto-populate into the screen right here. But the most important takeaway really is just making sure you get all these additional data points that a typical ICP analysis wouldn't do. So a typical analysis would just do employees, revenue, location. That's literally going to tell you nothing. Like you're going to have 10 million companies on your list, and it's just a waste of time. What you really want are these sort of descriptors, key targeting descriptors you can use to find the companies that'll be a good match for you. And for us in particular, technographics or technologies are really, really good for us. In fact, you can see here Elasticsearch appears quite often. That's a technology that is a great co-occurrence with our particular platform. People like to use us, our graph database, for integration to Elasticsearch. So now that I know that, I can actually just literally click on this and find a bunch of companies that use Elasticsearch in their product or inside their company. But I'll let Ben take over from there and talk about point number 2.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerome. So with point number 2, right, ties in on the ICP point, but once you have that ICP, be as specific as possible with actual account selection, right? Just from my experience, I see a lot of reps always rushing into the contact sourcing part, but the more due diligence, right, and the more time you spend on the account selection can only optimize the contacts response rates and ultimately the meetings booked rate, right? And so very high level, garbage in, right, you'll get garbage out, right? So a weak ICP will actually translate to an account list that might have a really high TAM, but not specific enough into what you're selling and even the sub-industries that you should be selling into. So with a 6+ parameter ICP, you can be much more confident. Every account I'm reaching out to is validated on a deeper data-driven model, right? Deeper data-driven insights. And so when you use a high coverage B2B company database, you also want to pay attention to how global your ICP is. Most data companies and data providers that sales teams work with are very US based, but there's a lot of coverage, right, to capture outside of that as well. And so what does this really mean, right? I think from a mindset perspective, it's also getting comfortable with a smaller, but a much more specific account list, right? This will also help when it's time to craft messages and you already internally know, hey, I might have for this month or this quarter be working with a smaller account list, but I know that each of them are a really, really good fit, right? And so in terms of actually using LeadGraph for this, we have a couple ways that LeadGraph can help. One is the ranking score on the right-hand side. Anytime you do a company search, right? So green is a great fit, yellow is good, and red is okay. And if you actually click into that, we'll break it down for you on a per data point basis, why it's deemed a great ICP fit as well. I'll take a quick pause here. I'll throw it back to Jerome for any additional thoughts as well.
Yeah, again, so we're talking about in this case, we're looking at like 5 parameters over here, but you could definitely easily narrow down your fit into more parameters if you'd like. This is just what's built into the scoring system in LeadGraph. Again, you can do this in any tool you use. Just make sure you pay attention to those. And then when you're building the lists themselves, um, incorporate them into your account targeting. You know, just don't run into just the contact search to start. Start with the company search, narrow it down from the million that you see over here. This is just a quick search. But remember earlier we talked about technologies and using Elasticsearch. So I'm going to just build a list off of that. Now we're at 2,400 companies. That's a really solid start. And nearly all of these, on the first page at least, are high scoring companies. So definitely take advantage of these account targeting signals that you might not have paid attention to before, just because the Zoom infos and the Clearbits of world have never pointed these out to you.
Yep.
All right. Well, back to Ben on our last point.
Awesome. So on the last point, everyone's favorite point, the actual outreach side, right? So just from what we've seen, it's really important to slow down your outreach and actually be very thoughtful in terms of who you're reaching out to, how you're going to reach out to them, right? And so let's say you have an account list of, 1,000 accounts, 2,000 leads. Don't email all 2,000 at once, right? Take an hour to really segment out your attack strategy. Personally, for me, I like to have tiers of accounts, tiers of leads. Tier number 1, the base tier, is little to no customization, right? These could be smaller companies that still fit well, like really early stage funding companies, things like that, where you're just customizing the list title, right? The general industries, more automated fields, right? Email in batches of a couple hundred at a time, basic A/B testing with that tier 1. Now, tier 2, we're taking it a step further, mid-tier, right? So semi-automated customization, where you can drop similar to companies that are customers, right? Maybe drop a case study that's already prepared, a couple one-liners that you've prepared, drop those in. Very sub-industry specific as well, right? So when you're pulling in a list, you segment those lists out from a sub-industry. Email in batches of about 20 to 50, right? That way you can focus on showing your expertise and some social proof as well. Now, tier 3, my personal favorite, is the high tier, personalized handwritten emails, right? So this is the tier where you're actually spending time on a Google search or within LeadGraph, which will show you, to find key news signals, funding rounds, awards, new target hires, new product announcements, things that when a prospect reads it, he or she will say, wow, Ben actually spent 30 minutes researching my company and he knows a lot about what we do and how they could help. Right? Now, for this, you want to email probably 1 to 5 leads at a time, right? And the key here is to show that you spent time researching their company, but you also know a lot about their company, right? More than the average person would, that you've spent time doing that. Now, in terms of segmenting out the account list into these tiers, there's a lot of different ways to do it. For tier 3, I personally will handpick our accounts. As you're in a company for a year, a couple of years, you yourself will understand some business knowledge of just what accounts would be a tier 3 account. Tier 2 are industry or keyword segmented, right? So again, the ranking score with diffbot can really help, right? Tier 2 can be all the green, great ICP fits. And then tier 1 is everyone else, right? Maybe people that have yellow scoring, a good ICP fit, maybe companies that meet a certain revenue threshold or series funding threshold. And then, yeah, we actually crafted up a sample tier 3 hyper personalized email based off of LeadGraph. So I'll actually pass it over to Jerome and he can walk through that at a high level.
Absolutely. Yeah, so as Ben had mentioned, one of the things that you'll want to think about as you're crafting that sort of tier 3 list, you're targeting or building that tier 3 list is just basically how good of a fit they are with your company. So before we do that, I wanted to just quickly show you um, how we find it. So I think one of these lists would have that. Yeah, perfect. So um, Ben actually showed me this trick the other day, and I thought it's really, really cool. So this is all our closed ones, right? And I know it's not the best list to show you because it's just our closed one already, not leads that we're targeting right now, but it has a list, a column over here of similar to companies, and these are other companies that we've closed as well. And so Ben actually shared with me that what he's looking for when he's browsing for companies and target lists are companies deals that we've closed before that are high dollar value, right? So if we've closed 3M before, obviously they're similar to 3M, but let's say we closed Daily Vote before, and I know that it's worth 100,000 ARR, like that makes one up look really, really good, and so I'll target that and add that to my tier 3 list. So that's something to keep in mind. Just try to kind of match them up with companies and deals that you've already closed, so you know like how to build those tier 3 lists. All right, but we're running out of time, so I want to kind of run into how we are able to how we're customizing these emails for individual tier 3 companies. So this is our feed. This is basically in LeadGraph how we're funneling a lot of like sort of the latest. Think of it as like a Google News, but just for your accounts, just for accounts that match your close one. And today we actually noticed that a company called Aerospike, which was not in our target accounts, but looks interesting. It's a three bar account, but they launched the graph database with in the news lately. So I wanted to target that and figure out like how can we build an email off of this. And so Ben and I wrote this email over here, and so this you can kind of see a lot of this are sort of templated. So you can see here that anything that's sort of grayed out has been templated, but this section over here is where we actually personalize this email. So I came across, or hey, Srinivasan, I came across an article on PR Newswire this morning that Aerospike has released the new graph database. So we're actually in the same space. I thought there may be some synergy to have a discussion and discuss areas Diffbot could potentially provide value. I've personally worked with several graph database companies, and they leverage Diffbot's data to supplement their customer database, add additional data for AI ML training, etc. Would you like to schedule a meeting? So this is how you're going to be able to kind of look at tier 3 companies in a whole different light, because instead of having to dive into each of them individually with LeadGraph, you can kind of see them in one screen and be able to start targeting them individually on a day-to-day basis just by looking at what's making headlines for those companies and just pull out those emails together.
Exactly. One
Any
quick
other
thing to
thoughts,
jump
Ben?
in. Yeah, one quick thing to jump in is that second line there. I actually went onto their website, looked at their 2 top common use cases, and they were like customer data profiles that they help with, as well as AI and machine learning training, right? So name dropping some of those use cases that I read through, that I went through their site, can really help append on top of just, hey, I came across this article, right? Shows I did some due diligence on their particular website. So
Perfect. And of course, incorporate this email as part of the greater sequence, right? Like we are personalizing this individually, but you'll want to be able to keep following up because these are, again, tier 3 companies. Don't just give it one try.
right.
All right, so we're at a minute left. That is all the pro tips we have for everyone here. So we don't want to take up too much more time. Again, a good ICP is at least 6 parameters. Be specific with account selection, then slow down your outreach. Thanks, Ben, for explaining all of this to us today. Thanks to David Delaney for having us at Tenbound. And definitely give us a shout on socials if you'd like, and join us in the booth for a free gift that is exclusive to conference attendees. So thanks everyone again, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you all. It was great. It was great meeting you all.
All right. Bye, everyone.